This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not reflect the opinions of the parent network or any of its other entities. They might not even reflect the opinions of the podcast host. The truth is out there. Here, we're just talking about things. Do your own research.
The jack of hearts will break me. Let's be like Judas, baby. Does he ever look through your mind?
Hey guys, it's Sean Shank, and I would like to welcome everybody to the first edition of the Blurred Lines podcast, an inevitability because I am a huge connector of dots. I'm not even a conspiracy theorist anymore because that's a false term. Anybody's a conspiracy theorist now is just somebody that's waiting for the eventualities to take
right.
Right. So first off, I want to say big shout out to sponsors, Black Label Chronometers with Ryan M. Babb. Just check him out on Facebook and on their website. He takes old LPs, custom designs, clocks, anything you want. He does a great job. And use Shank15, that's SHANK15 as a code, and you will get a discount. Also, check out myvibe.com. That's MYV or MYVYV.com. Need to pick me up in the middle of the day. Got the 2 o'clock doldrums. If you don't know what doldrums are, it's the at work. If you're tired, you have these little smelling salts, you crack them open, boom, wake you up. It's great stuff. Again, use code SHANK15, SHANK15, and they'll hook it with a discount. And don't forget, MSH.com, Meet So Horny. My guys out there, Jacoby and B, do a great job and have some of the best spices on the market. So, that being said, I would like to welcome back, and I want this to be a part of a series because this man's intellect knows no bounds. I'd like to welcome back Mr. Gerry Gobel. Gerry, thank you so much for...
Thank you very much. I appreciate the welcome back. I don't get that very often. So
He's like the antithesis of Mr. Cotter.
Yeah, it's like, it's when Mr. Cotter learned too much, and then it was like he had to split. It's that Mr. Cotter, the one that shaved his mustache and pretends he's a banker. You know.
Witness protection Cotter?
Right, he saw something. Mr. Cotter's gone. I don't know, but that bag boy does an awful lot of Groucho Marx. So.
Okay, so so Blurred Lines.
Yes.
I've been talking about this for some time, and I think what really generated this was a week ago. I did my first open mic in probably, 9 years, possibly.
Nice.
No, because I closed out, and yours was a graduation show, so that wasn't even an open mic. So yeah, it's probably been about 9-10 years. And a comic, Brad Miller, he was roasting all the comics on the show, and I was going to blast, and he was right before me. Yeah. And he said, Sean's great, funny guy, super nice. He said, but if you really want to get him going, talk about the moon landing. And as soon as he said that, I'm just like, it was fake. We're living in a matrix,
Yep.
So I just.
That's great.
Yeah, and I mean, it was spot on. But here's the thing. I'm so tired of the sanctimony by people that are just blind to everything. And I want to start out by saying this, and then I'm just going to ask you some questions because you are the dude.
Thanks.
To anybody listening to this that would ever say our government would never do that, or there are people out there that would never do that, I would recommend very highly that you go and check out the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Okay, now the Gulf of Tonkin, we had 2 battleships out in the Gulf of Tonkin. We had one that was actually attacked. Now, this happened on August 2nd, but on August 4th, they said that we got attacked again. That did not happen. All right, our government even admitted to the fact that it didn't happen. But because of that second attack, it was one of the motivating factors that got us into the Vietnam War. And because of that, thousands of people lost their lives because of a lie. All right. So if you ever wondered, would my government do that? Yes, the hell they would. And yes, there are powers out there that want to subjugate us, if not out and out kill us. All right. We are flyover. We are the deplorables. We are people that they just want to lie to.
Yeah.
And take from. So I have facts on the moon landing that we could talk about, but honestly, now that I'm sitting here, what is something that's going on right now that is just burning you up? Because I know there's myriad things that we could talk about. The Biden with, well, the house is burned down because they didn't have the correct roof.
Correct.
Never
Yeah.
dummy.
Right. Right.
But so what's burning you up right now as far as
So
conspiracy?
okay, so there's an interesting thing that happened. The solar eclipses happened on April 8th. Okay, total solar eclipse.
Right.
So they got the Department of Health, and it's like, what was it? I did note cards on it because I felt that was like, I feel it's a bit. Benton County Homeland Security and Emergency Management. So I'm like, Benton County got, and I went and checked in some of the financials, and they got Homeland Security money. They got like $77,000 worth of Homeland Security money. So they had to spend it on something apparently. And so now the eclipse is an emergency event that we need to be warned about. So now, if you go into deep conspiracy waters and then you start talking about Project Bluebeam, what would make the best projection screen in the universe would be a total solar eclipse, because that's the only time you can look right directly at the sun, supposedly. That's the only time they advise you that you can look at an eclipse.
Right.
There's a certain moment, right?
Right.
But the Project Bluebeam thing was the idea that you would get a visitation from a superior supernatural being. It'd be predominantly your if you believe in Jesus, it's Jesus. If it's Muhammad, it's Muhammad. It's whoever your daddy is. You know what I mean? So he pops in your head, and they tell you, "Hey, man, you got it all wrong, man. You didn't interpret it right." So then you're supposed to worship this new guy. Believe me, why would we lie twice, right? So, so that's the sort of the preface of it. Now, there's a story behind the whole Project Bluebeam. There was a guy that got Canadian dude. I can't remember his name right now, but it's just the whole idea that why is this is federal money they're spending on. And now, if you go to the Indiana.gov website and look at their page, they dumped some serious bread on this. They got emergency evacuation plans. They've got, take food with you. Here's places you can go to visit. You want the glasses, we'll hook you up. It's like, but it's Indiana.gov, and look for the solar eclipse stuff. And it's a big old website. It's big old, spend a huge amount of money. Because then the question is, why are they getting, they really want everybody out looking that day for some reason. So I'm just going to put that out there. If Jesus shows up on the total solar eclipse, be a little sketch, be a little suspicious. Just saying.
But here's my okay. So, if art reflects society, many times, and if you look at I think an example of this, kind of adjacent, would be the graphic novel The Watchmen, which was eventually turned into a movie. And at the end of it, now in the movie, they made Dr. Manhattan the bad guy, but in the graphic novel,
right?
And this was one you passed on to me.
Oh my God, I was so angry about that. They changed the moral of the story. So what's the moral of the story in the movie? The movie is that God is against you, and you're going to unite against God. That ain't how it works. See, they couldn't do the alien ending because that ruins Project Bluebeam. They got all these aliens on hold coming out, and they need us to fall for something. So I'm like, no, I don't. This is all suspect. It's very suspect,
Yeah, and I thought that was very strange that they changed that up the way that they did, because if you look at the graphic novel at the end, the way, like the mutants are stretched across the skyscrapers, and their carcasses are exploded everywhere, and humans are united against
a false enemy.
Right?
Yep. Right.
And if you look at Independence Day, humanity got united against an alien enemy. Like, there are different things that have given a nod to this. But now we've been seeing, planes that are flying over and green lasers scanning entire neighborhoods and things.
Right.
Not to mention the direct energy weapons, which everybody knows, you know, are
They're
basically
starting to see it. People are starting to see it because it's selectively burning, and it's like, every time the Blue Man group goes somewhere, they're the only survivors for some reason, and I think it's, I think maybe the Blue Man group is behind it. Or the Smurfs finally decided to go off on Gargamel. They're like, screw this shit.
Who's the group that did the song Blue? It's blue, da bo dee da bo da.
Got the whole movie.
But
So,
I mean,
yeah, no, it's really wild. Because then the thing is like, okay, so there's a Haiti guy. His name is Barbecue. He's the guy who supposedly turns flamethrowers on people. He's the rebel boss that's trying to overthrow Haiti government right now.
okay.
So, but it was all these things about barbecue. And my thing is like, okay, so I know communications happen through the headlines. So you look for specific stories or buzzwords and just look for the patterns develop, and you'll find different. Sometimes you'll be like kind of surprised. There's so many that day, like today, a whole bunch of stories about birds. Just all different sorts of stories and stuff, But then on the other side of it, there's also like, fire stuff. Look for forest fires. You start to see the whole thing play out. And it's like, there's a theme that changes a little bit. The Titanic came up again today for some reason. The guy that got blown up in the little tiny sub that went down with the joystick.
Oh, yeah, that bullshit.
The rich guy. And he died with my joystick, that son of a bitch. But the headlines start to pop up, so you start to see, what are we reading about here? What's the Titanic represent? Something. The shutdowns on the Facebook and the shutdowns on all the media platforms are kind of on purpose. Like, why would the phone people be over the computer users? Like Facebook phone users were affected today. Computer people weren't. Well, it's a different program, but they can affect certain things. Now, AT&T was messing around during the Fannie Willis case because they were trying to get the emails from Fannie Willis during the time that went down. So it's like these things are not. My question is, anytime the power goes out, or there's something that doesn't work, ask yourself, what did you miss today?
Right.
Go look at the news. Go look at the newspapers to find out what's what. And some stuff is pretty crazy. Like the. I don't know. It's just like the armorer for the shooting for Rust. She got convicted today, so she's doing like 16 months and it was just sort of resolved like that, like it's over. So I don't know. Is this where Baldwin skates, or is this like still overlooking the fact that the assistant AD was the guy who was on the Crow, the Brandon Crow version of the Crow, and now the new Crow hops out, and we're just seeing it all play out, because they're remaking the Crow. Here he is. He's got an eyeball for a nipple. Great. So
Okay,
great. And that's Illuminati. And hey, for the record, I wiped my eye earlier. That was not a Masonic hand symbol. I was just rubbing my eye. I just want to let you know it wasn't a one-eye thing. I don't do the triangle thing. I'm not a Hova guy.
Right. So, okay.
In case I turn up floating in a swimming pool, I just want it to be known. So I was rubbing my eye.
and just so everybody's very aware, I'm not suicidal. Jerry, are you feeling suicidal?
No, don't own a gun or nothing. I'm completely undefended. I could never, if I hang myself on stage, that would be probably how it'll go. Somebody will sabotage a belt. It'll be like right before, like they used to do, they come up to the horse and they kind of scissor on it a little bit so it'll break, and I'll reach out. There's that symbol again. I'm hanging myself, the belt breaks, I fall off stage and die. That's probably how it'll go. But
this is going to be tough to get through this first episode because there's just so much.
Yeah.
So much to cover. There's so many layers to peel back. It's just like the alien thing.
Yeah.
Okay. The government had, aliens are real. Yeah, it's a thing.
Right. There was new skeletons. They got new skeletons. They look like fetuses that they'd taken like the head off of like a triceratops. If you figured a fetal triceratops and put the head on a human kind of fetus, and they said that was the alien. So it was better. It looked better than the paper mache one before. So they're really putting effort into it. But they got more. Some of their R&D guys got back probably.
Yeah, and the thing, and the thing that gets me about you speaking on this, it's like they don't even try. I mean, if you look at the NASA videos as an example, you talk about, their guys, their designers, you can see the eyelets on their belts.
Yeah.
They're hanging. And you can see when they're moving in a way that doesn't work. There have been a couple times where it's the astronaut beside them will reach over and grab their belt and adjust them.
Right.
There's been like the video from the International Space Station where they're out doing a spacewalk, and then you see this mouse go in front of the camera, right?
Right.
Not possible in space.
That was a noise from you, right?
Yeah, this is me.
Okay. I thought maybe that was the countdown clock. I was like, okay, they found us.
Oh, I think we're already found out. I mean,
I'm sorry. Keep going. My bad.
no, but it's just it's all the bullshit. I mean, and I guess we can start with the moon landing, but it's
well, I actually have an interesting video on that, which I don't know I don't know how you'd play it or something, but to prove it. But it's basically, and I ripped it because I didn't want it to get away. But some French documentary guy went out and he actually interviewed Alexander Haig, Henry Kissinger, and Donald Rumsfeld, and they were all in on this thing where they said, we faked the moon landing footage because we did not want to get to the moon or fuck up and not get to the moon. We wanted to have pictures ready because we couldn't lose the image to the Russians. So that's not saying that they said that takes it completely out of the whole are we on the rock or not. The question then becomes, did they fake it as a backup plan? And the video says some kind of crazy shit about how Nixon was. It's like almost like they made Nixon the fall guy, because then he goes crazy and he starts ordering the assassinations of people. And one of the dramatizations was this guy went to the Arctic and the assassin found him out and just shot him, like a baby seal. And it was really weird. But it was Henry Kissinger, Alexander Haig. I mean, you start looking at those guys, their connections with Kennedy and all that crap. I mean, just as how long they were in the business. And then you've got Donald Rumsfeld, the guy who had to announce some money was missing from the cash box the day before the worst tragedy ever happened. And these guys are guys that faked the moon landing as a backup plan. And that was the other thing, too, about who took the pictures. Because that's always the thing is who. Okay, so it's the first guy getting out of the thing. Isn't it the guy that took the picture? Actually, the first guy that got out and then took the first picture on the moon of a guy getting out of the thing. Because it's like, who's on the moon taking the picture? So it's like once you start looking at that, then you go, yeah, okay, most likely. And then I've got another video of Stanley Kubrick saying, yeah, we faked it.
Yeah, and I've seen that.
Messages. Right. So there's two substantiating things that say there was a faked landing footage. Right. So you can acknowledge that as a thing, right? So there's the problem is people a lot of times won't look at stuff like that and go, oh, well, I don't know. And it was like, and then it's a weird video, dude, at the end of it. And it's like, they start reading out of scripts, like their fucking lines up and they reread it. Like, and they're like, oh, we're going to do that again. I want to read that again. Like they're reading out of a script and they're performing
right
to say this thing, basically where they blame it on Nixon being a crazy man and just assassinating everybody. It's like wet works. He was in charge of the wet works because Nixon didn't trust. Because if anybody got out that the moon landing was fake, okay, whatever you say. But he was also the guy who was asking who killed Kennedy, and that's another reason Nixon had to go. Because I always felt that whole Watergate thing smelled a little funny because there was always talk about the prostitution ring that was going in the Watergate hotel. So if they were sneaking in to find that information on the Democrat convention or the committee, maybe that's not what committee meetings they were getting into. You know what I mean? When Epstein Island just lived right in town with the congressman, they didn't have to get on a boat or a plane or nothing. They just walked down the steps. But Nixon's gone, and he was also very critical of Bohemian Grove. So then the whole thing with the blurred lines thing is like, okay, so find a baseline where you've been lied to and try to figure out what the narrative would be. So once you see this video, it's really crazy because it looks like Kissinger, Haig, and Rumsfeld are all lying, doing this as an act. Like, this is the act of us doing it. Now, are they acting about the Nixon being a crazy murderer, or are they lying about the whole not getting to the moon? But they say we got to the moon. We just didn't have a cameraman out there taking pictures. That was what they say in the video. So technically, you can still argue the case on both cases, but say that's where it'll get lost in the fluffle, is that the government willfully lied to you, and it was like the phone to Earth. Like he's calling on the phone. Hello, how are you? I'm great. It's like, what do you got, a dude out there with a tin can? It's real long. It's ridiculous, but you don't notice it because in the moment of the excitement of the psyop, you fall for it every time. And that's why it's just a question of always figuring out, what did I miss? What's the thing that's going on? And how is it possibly bullshit? Everybody accepts everything from anybody. And I'm like, don't accept everything. Just accept it. I have a very open mind about things. It's like, I'm accepting of all, but I don't believe it. But it doesn't mean I'm dismissive of stuff, even if it sounds stupid, because there's been a lot of things that I thought sounded stupid a long time ago that I'm coming around to feeling like, dude, you really already knew this. You just thought it was stupid. And now it makes sense.
Right.
You start to play it all out. Like the whole idea of the Vietnam War. All we're talking about there was a regime change over the country. And it's the standard plan. That's how it happens with every country. And then you realize that there's a pattern of a behavior, country by country by country, crawling through it like a snake. And you say they don't want to talk about the whole elders of the protocols of Zion. But when you look at what the book actually says, kind of the thing, which leads you to believe there's a cabal of people doing it. Now they say you can't say it because it's Jewish and they're anti-Semitic, but Luciferians are a subsect of Judaism. So it ain't a crime to be Jewish, but if you're smoking dudes, it's probably not a good behavioral pattern. So I don't know. And the thing is you just look at how it always goes down. It's like a agitating group of people on the ground that wreak havoc. Then you have narratives spun. Your armies are weakened. The inevitability is they put soft people in hard positions, and then they inevitably crumble. Or they just buy crooked ones, and then you get all the crooked ones in there, and they just let it collapse. They just take all the money and the aid money, and then they let the whole thing fall in on itself because they don't care about being there later. They're going to cash out and move on to the next country to knock down. Because as long as they're destabilized, people can disappear pretty much. It's super easy to make people disappear. Money disappear, assets disappear. If that isn't the one reoccurring thing about warfare, is if you couldn't keep any of the stuff that you got by killing people, there wouldn't be a reason to have it. So why are we really here? And then you look at it's the same pattern. It's the same organized behavior, just going from country to country to country. And welcome to America.
Right, but okay. So with that being said, then there is a convergence of so many things happening right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It seems like
it's written. It almost seems written, doesn't it?
Of course it does.
Like it's coming to inevitable conclusions. All the threads wrap up, and now there's a dead spot. So we're filling some dead air because we got to let this fester because we're living in another psyop.
Okay, so but outside of the psyop though, some of the other things that are happening, and I don't know if these, you could say it's them doing the projections or it's HARP or whatever it is.
Right.
But it seems like outside of the things that would be controlled by man, the things outside of man, rivers bursting forth into deserts where they haven't been for 2,500 years,
right.
Faces in the sky, I think it was today or yesterday, a freak snowstorm slams into California out of nowhere in seconds. Earthquakes, Oregon, pieces of gigantic quartz pushing up through the ground, smoking, like all of this shit. It's like,
that's cool.
But it's like,
what was that?
Oregon.
Okay.
And So then another example, and I'm gonna have to do a room change here real quick. So you're gonna take a trip with me because
Okay.
the dogs are gonna go nuts here in a second. So
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you had to use the bathroom.
This isn't bad podcasting because you're just listening, but to those that are watching the video, life.
Yeah. But you got to look at all the awards on the wall. See, there you go.
Yeah, you got to see all the wonderful Sean Shankness degrees and everything.
Yeah.
But so, with the convergence of these things, right? It seems like it is almost biblical.
Yeah.
This stuff that is going on, and it is to some degree incredibly frightening.
Right.
With the eclipse thing. All right.
Yeah.
Jesus, crime and Italy, with the people that are, pulling these different, as you said, the threads, pulling the threads together and saying, well, this means this, and this, it's like,
right.
Good God, I mean,
right.
Is this really what's happening? And if you're pointing at certain things, it's like, this has never happened. Euphrates drying up, as far as we know in recorded history, this hasn't happened.
Right.
And there are these like spots that they
underground voices and stuff.
Yeah, and
supposedly the angels or something.
And is somebody pulling some bullshit, or is this actually happening? Because the thing that's so frustrating is there are entities out there that do this just because they get a kick from making videos. It's almost like you don't know what to believe, you don't know what to think, because there are so many things and so much disinformation coming from so many directions.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess my question is, like, from your perspective, where do you think we're at with all of this?
Okay, so tying the lines on. See, it just seems to me like, oh boy, this is just going to send me right into the fucking shit house. So I think Trump wins 2024. I think the corruption is rooted out, and you're going to find out. So this is where, everybody gave the Q stuff such a bad rap, but it's not out of date yet. The thing was, they always talked about the pause where the military would come out and tell you about everybody that was tribunalized. Now, I don't know, man. It just seems to me like you look at a lot of these faces of people that are on TV, like the new Hillary Clinton.
Excuse me. Yeah.
She looks different. They all look a little different. And that makes you wonder. It's like, is this just bad AI? Is this bad makeup? I mean, you had the head of the CIA. It was an article literally in the Daily Mail about 3 days ago that was about the top CIA official tricked George W. Bush by having a full mask on. She couldn't tell it wasn't a real person. She pulled the full face off and surprise. And I'm like, that was an old article. But they just replayed that back out. And then you start to look at all these things with Joe Biden, and like Joe Biden talking about the blue roofs. Like, man, if I were writing this, dementia will show you the truth, And he's like, Joe Biden is now the most dangerous guy in the deep state because he's got dementia and can't keep a secret. That would be like, oh my God, we got to get him in the hospital quick, because you give away the game. The game is not over yet. They're going to play till the last minute because you're never going to quit until you're dead. Right. So the story must play on. See, this is the drama building up to the election, which will be a massive election win. It's going to, the thing that they announced yesterday, they said they thought it was Hillary. But then, I've still got it in a bag for Michelle. I'm sorry, but she's had a pack for the last 3 or 4 elections cycles. So she's got a thing to do that. But again,
with Michelle,
you start looking to it, though. It's like it's a planned event thing. Everything is planned. Like Fannie Willis comes to a close. Now we go to New York to talk to Judge Erdogan. We're going to catch him doing something weird.
Right, it's always the next thing.
Yeah, and these things resolve themselves almost instantly. It's like a serial novel, like the E. Jean Carroll thing, and the we won, and they're like, oh, can he pay the bill? And it's like, yeah, I just sold gold shoes.
Okay,
you got me on that. I didn't see that.
Do me a favor. I need to go grab my coffee. Would you speak on your thoughts, opinions on the 4 different Bidens with the earlobes, the whole thing.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's easy enough to do. So, if the idea is if you've got an actor working on a blue screen, and say the original Joe Biden with the weird head is dead, he looked like young Frankenstein, got a Boyle. He looked like Peter Boyle, had that kind of head, right? But now he doesn't. But you start to see the pictures of him. The earlobes attached to the neck is one of them. There's one where the ears are bowed out. There's another one with the high white forehead. That was the dark brand, and when they highlighted him with the red lights behind him, and it was all imperial. And then now you've got, and there's definitely a Biden. The Biden that's always on the bike, or the guy that used to get that detail, had really hairy legs. So it's like, yeah, body doubles are normal. That's not a new thing. The thing is passing dudes off and trying to pretend that Biden's functional. That might be why you find him in really crisis situations. Is at some point they really let the real guy out. Do they trust him to? Well, I mean, the Pope couldn't get in the Pope mobile today. They couldn't get in. He couldn't get up. His legs were too bad. So they had to put him in a wheelchair and haul him out. See, how many more times are you going to see pictures of the Pope? He's been outed. And so that's the thing. It's going to be perceived as a weak. Well, for him, he still can be in a wheelchair and be fine. But like for a presidential candidate, Biden not being able to walk or anything like that, that would be just the breaking point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So you got to keep the guy with the appearances of looking upright. So that's why the mask thing was such a convenience, because you could just put a mask on and all you needed were the right eyebrows. Like Fetterman, way up into Fetterman. Boy, he seems to be reasonable lately. It's almost like he's a different dude. Crazy. That's,
right.
Or forehead seems smaller, but whatever. Whatever.
If you look at and I know people do they I don't want to say morph, but they do change a bit when they get older.
Yeah.
If you look at Biden, I just saw. I think I sent you this video of him in 1982 when he's talking to Congress, and he's basically saying dropping N bombs like crazy. Saying we got an in charge here and an in charge there, and you look at the man and the shape of his head. Okay, right. Now I grew up in a home where my mom was like masterclass sort of artist. She could sculpt, she could paint, she could draw.
Yeah.
And I grew up under her tutelage. Okay. And I learned drawing techniques from her, took art classes. And so when you learn that kind of stuff, you learn how to look at the shape of anatomy and how to draw it. And if you look at the shape of that dude's head, in those 1980 congressional hearings when he's dropping all that incredibly racist rhetoric, it is not the same head. It is just not. And for somebody to look at that man and look at what we've got now and the attached earlobes and things and not attached, and I've said many times, dude, I don't care how much the body changes when you get older. Your earlobes do not grow into your fucking side of your head. People just ignore it. It's like they don't even want to see it.
Well, it begs the question, who's that? And if nothing's out they ever thought it was, that's why it's the craziest thing is that I think once they took over control of the government, it didn't matter anymore what we thought. And they just played us this picture narrative of what happened to justify everything they're planning on doing anyway. Which is, the whole idea of having the one world order, that's the whole point of the game, Right. So if you talk about this in terms of biblical terms, if the world is the devil can be made God. Does he win the game? Or is that just the end? Are we running the shot clock out? So, or is this a possibility that, I don't know. I don't know how we would know that time is real, because if you could wash the timeline, and if the calendar is supposed to be a 13-month calendar on a different cycle,
it is a 13-month calendar because that's why all of our fucking circadian rhythms and everything are off.
Right, and why would we do that?
To fuck
us up.
Yeah.
So if you're planning it on a scale like that, that's some kind of heavy duty fuckery. That's not like, like pranking your buddies. This is like, no, you're going to program a whole group of people to try to reprogram how they normally operate. It's going to make them weird.
Yeah.
and you can make them adapt. You know, if you think about it in terms of MK Ultra stuff, it's really just a question of how much trauma you give a person to make them change. You know, if you give them enough drugs, psychedelics, you can get them questioning the nature of reality, and then you break them. You can tell them what they should be, and then they'll be that new thing. You know, if you're an alcoholic and you do LSD, you're not an alcoholic anymore. That was why they did it. Right. So you could reprogram your brain. So it's possible. Yeah, we're hackable. That guy said it right, but I wouldn't trust that. You know who I'm talking about? The guy from the Klaus Schwab's group. His second in command.
I know the guy you're talking. That's the thing I like. I just don't remember the person.
Yeah, he's got one of those pushed in top kind of heads, you know.
Yeah, very suspect.
To serve man, you know, right? So, but then it's the question is what is real? So it's like, then you go, okay, so if nothing is really real and we're just being manipulated to be drawn out, the way that this drawing out is now is that we're in a fear cycle. Everything bad happens every day, and then they run it every day, and then you're like, you know, maybe it's not such a big deal if it happens every day, and then they run out of things to do. So now we have fires in different locations. You just look at what smart cities want to be smart cities, and you start to look at who's getting burned.
The Amarillo, Chile,
right?
And
what is the purpose of it?
But that's the thing. It's like, first of all, I don't believe in coincidences. All right. When I was a youth, I was even suspect of coincidences then. But then as I grew and learned and, you know, would talk to learned individuals such as yourself and things, and you start to see the bullshit for what it is. Now, I want to tell my viewers here, this is something important to know. Gerry, you have a history degree, yes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Gerry's got a history degree. I'm a PhD student. All right. So
I was supposed to be a teacher. I got education secondary and
So okay.
A huge slew of other crap. And then they gave me a history degree because I took so many classes. They were like, oh, hey, you know.
Like, but you are somebody that understands history. So
right.
When the reason I bring that up, our CVs, is just to let people know it's like we're not. I mean, yeah, we are a couple of rednecks considering where we came up from, but you know, it's not like we're coming out of the woodwork without some education behind these things that we're discussing. And somebody who understands history and knows patterns and understands that history, I think in the overall sense, is kind of bullshit. I don't think there's a lot of truth to it. It's just, you know, I think Easter Island is this example that I keep bringing up to people, you know, because when I was a kid, for some reason, that was one of my favorite subjects. I absolutely loved it. I loved the statues on the island and the heads, because it was always like, man, that's so crazy that they would just put heads everywhere. And then one day somebody picked up a garden trowel and was like, well, let's just see if these go. And now we know that they go dozens of feet into the ground. They're massive full body statues. But we knew, and that's the thing that frustrates me. We absolutely knew for years. You know, I have a book still from the 1960s about Easter Island, all the facts. Now that's all bullshit. It's all bullshit.
Yeah. Yep. So here's the theory. What if those heads are the rods of God, and the aliens that wanted a tectonic plate shift, they just shot them into the earth, and that's why they went so deep. They were like statues, and they were like, fuck you, I'll send you stone God. And then the world collapsed, and they had to reset everything because of the mud flood, which was the original, anyway.
No, hold on. Don't skate by that. Do not skate by that. Because here's the thing. Every one of these things, and this is why this is going to be so difficult, because we have skated by so many subjects that literally we could take mud flood as an example and break that down and go into dozens and dozens of things that could take hours to talk about.
Yeah.
But for those that are listening or watching this, could you please illuminate us about the mud flood and what that is?
A lot of it, when you start talking about architectural structures that are built underground, it's like they go back to the old 19th. When the first San Francisco houses, they were saying that those buildings were there. Mm-hmm. And they dug down, and there were bigger parts of the buildings underneath it. And then you had your science fair exposition places were built. So they were like, that this the suggestion, and then that was that they burned them down right away. Like Nikolai Tesla set up a wireless light display, and for some reason they took it down and destroyed it all, and smashed the marble and stuff, and they didn't even try to reclaim any of it for some reason. But then it's like you start looking at how they built it, and you're like, why don't they do it this way? How come that's some weird kind of bolts to put on? How the hell did they make those? But then those are like super old buildings. So then the question becomes, like, when you were talking about the flood being like necessarily from the sky that Noah's Ark was in, that deluge flood potentially would have been like, if there was huge amounts of water pouring, there would be a huge amount of displaced mud. So if there were cities that were built, they would have been buried. That's assuming you think it comes through a dome, but it's coming from the sky either way. But the whole idea would be it was a tectonic plate shift, and the Sahara Desert used to be underwater. Right? So is it sort of acknowledged with all the globies that the tectonic plates moved? But whatever, when either the flat or the round earth moved, there was a huge amount of mass displaced, and it buried cities and such. And that is the mud flood when they start talking about digging through the remainder. Simpsons does it all the time when they do those layers of alien and treasure and dinosaur.
Yeah, and as it goes through the ground, and you'll see like, absolutely. And okay, so again, yet another thing that we're kind of sliding by real quick that has fascinated me is the Chicago. We have some. It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. Chupacabras. Anyway, kids, Snake Mound Trail. There's something there because that was supposed to be where they could see the glacier from the beginning. Mud flood and the glacier might have something to do. I don't know. Don't tell him.
So
anyway,
the Chicago World's Fair Expo. So you're talking about these amazing buildings, and if you look at the photos, the architecture is sublime.
Right.
And
art.
Yeah, it's art, all of it, marble and everything. And they try to say, oh, no. These are all made out of paper mache. My ass. Wouldn't have stood up to one rain, right?
They explained the electric lighting.
Yeah.
Wireless electric lighting. How did they do that?
Exactly. And they said it took
Tesla stuff throws it all off because Tesla was there. It was all high tech and shit because they knew,
So they did that with the technology of the day. They supposedly put together that entire thing in a swamp of all places. Right. And then once it was done, they, for whatever reason, razed it to the ground. Why? Why would they tear down all of that magnificent architecture to the foundation? What sense does that even make?
The same reason you tear down statues. Because you're erasing history. The whole point is to erase history. So if you have no bearing in time to any kind of timeline, you're just kind of adrift. Right. We're in the age of what? What are we supposed to be doing? We just work to death and then move on, Just weird. It's just very strange.
Right. Okay. So circling back. All right. What I would like to do with this podcast is just pick a piece of subject. I mean, what I want to do is speak to, guests and say, what's a conspiracy theory you are, as they say, 1000% willing to die on a mountain for. I have many. Yeah. But I would like to focus on, primarily on one at a time. And we were talking about the moon landing and the different aspects of it. And you said some things that, it's almost like a magician at work. Okay. Like our dear friend Ian Montgomery, he'll be doing something over here, with the flash and the razzle dazzle. And the whole time this hand is working. Yeah. Okay. Right. So, like you said, we get caught up in the moment of the moon landing, this great, thing that has happened. Oh, we made it, and when they were taking off, who was working the camera as the thing was taking off?
Right.
And panned up and followed it into space. And one of the things I did before you and I linked up tonight was I looked at conspiracy theories about the moon landing. And I would say probably the first 50 hits that came up on Google were how debunked. This is
Yeah.
conspiracy theorists are wrong. This isn't true. And it's like, well, how do you? Okay, if this isn't true, explain the fact that there's no blast crater. How the fuck is there no blast crater? How do you debunk that?
You had to fire a rocket underneath it. I don't know, man. They just don't address it, I guess. But it's easier to laugh about it and pretend that the people that talk about it are, just nuts. But then you show them the videotapes. It's like, here's Kubrick himself. Here's Alexander Haig. Haig saw some shit. We're talking about some deep guys here. They've disposed of a couple presidents. Oops. Did they? I mean, you know what I mean? So they've all been involved.
Briefed.
I know, right? We get back on the watch list. Why not? My cover's already blown. Screw it. Yeah, it's if you believe what you're told right now, ask yourself why you believe it, and is there a possibility you're wrong? Because I just entertain the option all the time. It's like the whole devil's advocate thing. It's like if you examine all possible possibilities, then you've got this. I hate to use the phrase spectrum, but you have the spectrum of events that could happen from one possibility. And then what you do is you start looking at connections of these blossoms. Like what event happened here? What event happened here? Donald Rumsfeld's talking about military money losses in the trillions. Coincidence? Maybe. CIA building got knocked out with an engine. Destroyed all their files.
You're talking CIA building. You're talking Building 7?
Yeah, 9/11. So it's a question of like the events floating over each other. So like sometimes you do things to serve an event, to frame an event. You know what I mean? And other times you're doing it because something's coming out that we're screwed. There's this thing, Fannie Willis, AT&T records. We got some problems with the AT&T phone lines. Look at all the problems you're having with your phone service right now.
Right.
And we didn't find out the other stuff in the emails until days later. And then supposedly they're still doing more testimony today, but they were supposed to be done Friday. And then they'll write a paper in a month and let us know. Why? Because that pushes it farther into the election cycle. And then that forces the rematch. Then we see Kabuki theater at its finest. It's going to be great.
And that's all it is massive theater.
Well,
everyone is pulling the strings of the populace. But here's the crazy thing. I was down in the Bahamas, and I was in a shop with the proprietor, very nice lady. Her name was Christine, and she's Bahamian. We are two definitely different cultures. She's black, I'm white. You put all these compartmentalizations to it. And we're sitting there talking while I bought a watch off of her, and she's working up the receipt and everything. And we started talking American politics. And she told me that the Bahamian people were very interested in what happens because as things go in the United States, so it goes in the Bahamas. That's what she told me. And she said, the Bahamian people are big fans of the U.S., especially because of everything that JFK did for them. Right. Well, we got to talking about kind of the shenanigans that are going on in the world stage and with politics and everything else. And it was just, like very like-minded. And I said, this is exactly what and there is a they. This is what they don't want. For two people from completely worlds apart, all right, different countries who have very little common ground. Luckily, we had language, right?
Yeah.
And some proximity to government. But outside of that, I said, and here we are agreeing about so much stuff.
Right.
Getting along and finding out that we have way more sames than we do differences.
Right.
I said, but if you step back from it and you listen to the rhetoric that's out there, they would want us to hate each other.
Right.
And that's what she said. She was like, "Yeah, right. You're right."
And the more time you hear it, the more you accept it. And
Right.
that's why when they play it through the media, they call it the Mockingbird media. So you hear it, repeated. It must be true.
Right.
And that's how you brainwash people, because it's the tube really is a victimizer. We're putting an electronic device in our eyes, and it's allowing us to, now even on the phone concept is 24/7 with us. It tracks all of our diagnostics. It records everything we say.
Mm-hmm.
It picks things for us. It's starting to decide it's going to write books for us next, but like, okay, good luck. Checking out. Check it out. We jumped the shark, folks. So we're either getting ready for a massive reset, which I know they always talk about the Great Reset, but it's like things are going to either go one of two ways. They either get worse or they get better. So if you put it in the terms of optimization of good things, we've had two different dudes. If the bad guys really did all of the things that we know they did on Epstein Island, and if you know what frazzle drip is, and if that's real, and if you got all of this sinister shit on the background that people need to be put to sleep for, and the military comes out and says, hey, we just avoided a civil war, folks. Because that's exactly how it's being played out. Everybody's 100% behind one candidate now. The other candidate was so bad, he's now admitting that your roof's not blue. You're probably going to get burned down. So I'm like, if he ain't the deep state asset bad guy, they have to, and he's not cutting it, right? They're going to have to pick another deep state bad guy. And then the Trump operative, you want to call him three Trumps, the blue tie, the red tie, and the guy on the golf course. Those are your three. And the red tie, he's the comedian. He's got bomb lines. He's got taglines. He'll tell you the joke. Silly woman, I was a mistake. When you brought, he does the whole thing, right? Blue guy, he's rationally makes sense. He talks in a reasonable fashion. He's very well spoken, but he ain't working the room. Now it's just maybe it's tie change. Sure, I don't know. Watch his haircut. Watch his ears. His parts changing, and I'm like, my hair changes. I got an eyebrow thing that happens. Is it this one? Yeah. Where some parts of it gets alopecia for a second because I'm in solidarity with Will Smith. I'm sorry, bro.
It looks like you got a little Gorgon.
Right. I'm just gonna let it go up. I figure it'll cover my forehead, and I'll just look, like the most sinister Jim Jones glasses wearing mofo out there. Be like, he is crazy. Look at those glasses.
It's funny you bring up Jim Jones or the Jones name because it makes me think of Alex Jones, and he, and I know your opinions on him and everything, and that's not warranted. But when they go back to, and it's funny because the gay frog thing, right? Yeah. But
what a great viral clip!
It's a great viral clip.
Good viral clip.
But the
thing, very effective.
If you pull away from it and look what he was actually talking about and the chemicals that are putting into the water and how it's actually infecting the environment and the amphibian species, he was not incorrect. But because the way that clip played out, they're like, look at this insane person. It's like, he may come across as insane, but one of the things I tell my students all the time is there's the surface level in the world that we are all living on. You have to get beneath it. You have to listen to the things people are saying. All right.
Right.
We have 2 years for a reason, guys. And when he came out with the gay frogs thing, the first thing I laughed, right? Because it's so silly.
Right.
But then the second thing that happened was, hold on a minute. What the hell is he talking about? And so I do some investigating on my own, and I find out, well, shit, he's not blowing smoke. He's not crazy.
Right.
This shit is happening, and they are poisoning our environment. He's just a horrible outside of the fact of him being an asset, whatever. His delivery system was shitty, and so now everybody can just look at it and go, no, easily dismissed. It's like,
yeah, it happens. But that's the thing about the belief part of it. It's like it's a certain amount. If you don't believe anything, everything sounds stupid. So, but the idea to speculate outside of the given story. So that's the thing. It's just being able to see the story narrative of what's going on. If,
Mhm.
okay, you believe in God, we are watching the sum totality of all time, right? You're outside of the universe looking at this ball of time. And so everything is happening. We're living it, the present, right? So we get to experience it as it goes through. We don't know what the answers are. The answers are already done, probably, maybe.
Well, now
It
you're
would have
talking
to be. It would
quantum
have to be.
theory.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you start thinking about it in terms of like, if this is what we're in, the story is going to play out regardless of how you feel about it being scared, right? So if there's supposed to be an alien invasion, I don't know. It seems like to me we're being fed a story. The more it comes across, it just comes across as like a control matrix, just like you're starting to see the walls of the cage. It's like, what do you really go? What's really going on?
Right.
Who's really funding the money? What would happen if everybody got the money they were supposed to get? You know, whatever you may say about Muammar Gaddafi, but what were the people of Libya getting?
Libya was doing great.
Was doing his own bank.
Yes.
You were getting paid. You were living the high life there. That's everything that the liberals say that they want. They want everybody to have an income and a home, and they all had it. If you were a citizen, you had it. But then some reason, Hillary Clinton helped them take out Libya.
Yeah.
Well, the slave trade's back, surprise, and it came with the Democrat. Oh boy, how redundant!
Isn't that funny that
Who owned the slaves? It was all the guys that now are you can't run from it. It's your people. It's your history. Not all white people lived in the South. Not all white people own slaves, but the ones that own slaves turn out to be long-term assholes. They're just in different positions now. They've switched the government over to being able to have like slaves as a person that you'd put on your farm to just giving you a social security number. And now you have to go out and give them what you make.
Right.
It's the best kind of slavery because everybody thinks they're sort of free, but then they feed you a bunch of shit to keep you not. I mean, you're not feeling. Nobody feels good anymore. Yeah, isn't that weird? All this medicine going around, everybody feels sick. Crazy. It's almost that's where we're supposed to be in the spectrum of the events that are happening. Where are we supposed to be? Are we supposed to be suffering here at the end? Or is there a turnaround coming around the corner and we're going to get saved because this psyop has been going and we're all going to be on the same side relieved after it's all done, that we won't tear the entire country apart?
What do you think?
I think we're going to find out. If I were going to do the side, okay, so then you got to ask yourself the question: would you commit? At what point would you be forced to reveal it versus would you reveal it? Like, if they've kept Kennedy's assassination secret as long as they've done, just by playing games, and it's supposed to be out. Supposedly none of the players that were involved in it that they redacted are even alive, but why won't they let it come out? Because it indicts agencies, because the agencies were the ones that did it, and they've taken over. And so when you weaponize a bureaucracy / covert ops, money off the books, and you start messing around with other versions, and then you find out that the whole honey trap thing ties back to the Epstein Island situations. It's all just about blackmail. With blackmail, you have corruption. Everybody that's every one of these guys that are getting busted for sex crimes and stuff, they all have underage girls, and everybody comes to party, and then they've got videotape on them, and now you got to join up or you'll be expelled. So, and the thing is it happens in the black communities and the white communities and all communities. It happens everywhere. You just got to want to have a guy who wants to be in charge. That's all you need. And a connection to the CIA or Mossad or whoever your agency happens to be. Because really what you're looking for is control. Once you got somebody on something, you can make them do what you want. If you got all the judges, you got all the lawyers, you got, all the politicians, who's going to stop you while you rob everybody?
Okay. So here's a question for you then. Because you went through a bit of an awakening some years ago, and you completely switched political position and some of the rhetoric that you were throwing out there. And if you would talk about that a little bit, but also then add to it, what would you tell somebody that goes through kind of what you went through? Because this is a difficult position to be in, because you talk about a great awakening and people looking around and say that, you talked about the Gaddafi thing, right? And that's the one thing somebody pulls away from this, and they start doing the research, and they're like, "What the fuck? That country was doing fantastically,
Right.
had their own bank and the gold and everything else." And like you said, Hillary said, "Nay, nay, can't have that," and went through there like scorched fucking earth, and that's what wakes them up to seeing this domino effect of, well, now this is fake, and now this is fake, and now this is fake. So if you would talk about kind of your switching of your mindset, and then what possibly is kind of the next step for somebody that's coming out of the matrix, so to speak.
Well, okay, so I feel like I was programmed in the 80s. So there's a different, I think generationally speaking, when you got to program a group of people, you got to do it generationally. It has to change a little bit every time. Because one group there has to be enough disconnect so that the two can't communicate and realize everything's cool. But they always got to have this strife thing going on. Everything changes new. Oh God, I don't like. But it's like ultimately, it's about telling. When I was there, I was a white savior. I was a Democrat. I was hard Democrat. If you were a Christian and you came in when I was doing comedy, I would go after you. I mean, I was like that. I was a prick. But when they put it in a position that you're doing hero work, when you're being a prick, you kind of go, well, sometimes it takes a prick to do the hero's work, you know? So, but that's the brainwashing part of it. It was intentionally, I was only given half the information. I was a history degree major. I'd taken all sorts of classes, and there was shit that when I learned it, I was like, why don't I know this? Why don't I know that there was an aerial attack in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Black Wall Street? They flew a plane and dropped a bomb. That's noteworthy. I didn't remember that. I love that kind of shit. But that's the parts where they skip a whole section in the history book. Let's go from Reconstruction to the 1920s. Charlie Chaplin and Hitler. It starts, you know? And then they skip over all that, and then they throw the Teapot Dome scandal at you to keep you bored. And nothing happened interesting in the 20s and the 30s, they say. But you're like, no, there was all sorts of bad things going on. But that's just what we're allowed to know happened. You go back and find old history books. That's where you want to get red pilled real fucking quick. Go find an old history book. Back when, if you can find something that is before the 1900s, right. You can find it before the turn of the century. Get it. Take a look at it. See what they got to say. You'd be surprised, you know, because it's just things you see. That's where all these pictures from the mud flood come from,
right?
Because it's old Victorian. It's back when they were taking pictures, the silver plate stuff. So they were out there hardcore doing this. This wasn't accidental photography. They went out there knowing they had to set up gear and rigging, and took all these plate pictures of these weird buildings and weird cities. And that's where they always talk about those big tall rooms with the big tall, extra tall. Like, who in their right mind would make it that big? Right. If you're an average sized person 6 feet tall and you made yourself a 10-foot doorway, people think you were stupid. It's like, why are you wasting all that space? Oh, maybe a 10-foot tall motherfucker lived here. I don't know. Maybe they had to bring their horses in and they like to ride them in. I don't know. Questions to be asked. But you got to ask yourself, though, that some of these really intricate old ones look really crazy. And then when you start putting the whole idea that the riggings on all of the domes, like the ice cream cone cups, I can't remember what they're called, that they have on top of buildings, like in Russia. And
yeah, I know you're speaking.
Yeah, so that was actually the generators, they were saying.
Right.
So it's like if they had a way to do generate. And it was an interesting thing I saw on TikTok is they took it was like a generator. It was copper wiring generated, and they had put quicksilver in the middle of it. And it was actually producing electricity. So it was really weird. But it was the whole idea that these things were just basically, they made your power outlet decorative. It was a standalone statue.
Right. But there's old technology where you can take, I think it's copper wiring, wrap it around, I can't remember what the metal is, and run a row of stakes into the earth and connect it with copper wiring, and you have created a battery. Like, it is an electric source.
Right.
And, I just saw a thing today, I think it was called the tags or the TES, where, they have hieroglyphics of these power stations where the obelisks actually would basically were the transformers, I think, essentially.
Yeah.
And, running electricity out, and the pyramids were nothing but massive power generators.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's quite possible. We start playing with magnetics and sound. And see, then we get into deep water again. I don't know. We get too deep.
Well, this one's tough because we're hitting everything.
Okay. Cause so there's this guy, the guy that created, or he found and isolated the AIDS virus. He came up, Montague, I think he's French. Can't remember his name. It's hard to remember, but he had this experiment he did basically trying to find out if water had a memory. And they found out that through a process of sending this thing back and forth, that the water itself would retain the memory of anything you could find the frequency for. So everything because they were like, you could create a medicine inside a person's body. You could just make it inside of you with a certain vibration. That's what that whole Star Trek thing with the wee, 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 wee thing was. Right, it was all vibrational changes in your body. It was you were creating the medicine within your body, and that's how you were getting healed. Because it was like, and I don't know if that's why Roddenberry did it, but the whole idea that you could use a sonic vibration to create a medicine within a body, was pretty crazy. And the story behind it, there's a video out on that too. But they sent it was I don't want to explain it because I'll explain it bad and it'll just sound like bad conspiracy theory stuff. Yeah. Once you're debunked forever, you're done. Once they tell you that Bigfoot was really a size 10, you got to sneak away and shame. Be like, oh.
He was just a hairy guy from Brooklyn. Actually,
yeah.
That was, oh my God. It was there was a cartoon on Adult Swim where there was the satanic dog.
Oh, yeah. Pickles.
Did you see that episode where Bigfoot was just the guy that ratted on the Gabagooli clan?
No.
And so they surgically altered him to be like Bigfoot. His whole gig is he plays Bigfoot out in the woods as witness protection, and his pastime is having sex with deer.
Right. Yeah, that sounds about right. Robot chicken. Yeah, that's definitely about right. So,
all right. All right.
Okay. So anyway, my career. Can I go back to that? Should I go back to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Please.
I had a momentary train of thought. So anyway, I got mixed up with the First Church of Cannabis. And it was an activist organization trying to legalize smoking of marijuana through religious freedom. And we had a plan. I had extra hard plans. I had a weaponized agenda, boy. I was brainwashed right. I quit my job, was living in the basement. I was producing videos, trying to get, none of it's there now. We got hacked and lost everything. So there's no even evidence we exist now, which is great. That makes it so much more worthwhile to spend all the time editing.
And it's all gone. I didn't know.
Back before AI could do it, I got some copies on YouTube with the AutoNation tag, but for the most part, the services and everything were lost. But I was there, and we were wiretapped, and they were checking out. They had a real hard on for us, and that's why my whole thing is I knew they were corrupt. Because I was there with it. So while I watched it happen, I started doing more reading and research, and one thing leads to another. And the next thing you know, you're following strands. Like, the thing is as a liberal, the more I learned about what I didn't know, I had to change my whole attitude thing. That was the whole thing about being a history major. That's probably what saved me. Because history is always about, sometimes you don't get it right. It's about correcting history, not making it how you want it. If something's weird and you go, oh, well, this wasn't it wasn't a suicide. Here's the thing. This is history, blah, blah, blah. But it's not like, I decided that, I was king and I made statues of myself everywhere. And everybody goes, oh, he was king at one point. History says so. You have to be able to accommodate these things. And that's especially if the problem becomes, and this is where it kind of blew my mind, is like, you don't have a starting point anymore. Because if they lied about everything, if there was a mud flood, and then it was like, there was this sinister cabal that decided they were going to control mankind. So they were going to control the calendar. They're going to switch timelines. Why is the Chinese calendar in the 5000s? Why are we where we at? Who lost some time here? Is there a big time change? I mean, it's all playing games with people's minds about what they know. They give you the information they want you to know, and then you have to figure out what's real. And going through all of this stuff and knowing what I know about being watched and having threats and all sorts of shit We had to move. We moved a couple times because of it. I don't like to be out in front a lot. I'm careful who I hang around with now. I have to be, you know what I mean? Because now it's like, suddenly you come in with a new Chinese friend right now and Trump's coming into office. Fuck you. I ain't hanging out. Sorry. Nice to see you, but I'm out the door, buddy. I don't, no. I've said enough shit. I've probably said enough shit to get myself in trouble, but I've seen things, So once you know things, you're just like, well,
But you lived. That's the thing that I want to make clear. It's not just your experience that of study and being a history major and all those things too. Like with this Church of Cannabis stuff in particular, you guys legitimately lived like harassment and by the state. And
and the neighbors hated us. And then we found out we had this crazy. We had there was a guy in the church himself who was playing counteragent. And he was going around the neighborhood fucking with people, getting them mad at us, making them come fight us. They'd vandalize our sign every other week. It was crazy shit. But when we found out it was an inside guy who was instigating stuff, and then it was like, what the hell's going on here? I think, it's really the saddest thing is if we hadn't had any of that weird shit, we could have pulled this off. We just ran out of money.
Right.
Because I was ready for sanctuaries, dude. That's how you break the drug war. You go and you put sanctuary at a person's house as they can smoke weed and they're safe because of religious conviction. You can't steal their shit.
Right.
That kills it because everything is about acquiring. And if there's nothing to acquire, they're not going to do it. The drug war is stupid. It's always been stupid. Holding drug companies to more of an accountability because fentanyl don't go natural. Maybe it's time for that. But, we never killed anybody, unless it fell on them. But that was the whole thing. And then finding out that the cannabis could cure cancer too. That was the other thing. It's the tinctures work, the research is there. Israel, it did it all already, but you can't tell a guy in Indiana that because they got to keep the black market right. If it still comes down to control.
Right.
So you got to play these games. Now, Ohio's gone legal. Have they? Nobody's got to grow. There's nobody over here who can sell it. They probably didn't think. See, this is probably where you can tell the activism has fallen off. Because back in Indianapolis, when everybody thought that they could make money off CBD, they all quit being activists. They all had to go off to their shops and make their money because that's really what they were there for. Right. So you come out here to Ohio, these guys don't have those people because they found out it didn't work. And the idea of them legalizing and recreational and being able to get it probably was like, forget about it. The way things are going, there's no way. So nobody bothered to start to grow. So now nobody can get it. So it's like, okay, so once it's legal, where are you going to get it from? Nobody's got any setup. There's no system in place. So you announced it's going to be a couple of years before it happens. They'll drag their feet. Who knows? Maybe repeal it. If Oregon goes bad, like it's going to, the drug repeal they're going to probably wind up having to do.
Right. Oh, yeah.
That's going to have a huge effect across the country. And then also, if you flip it into the fact that if you think the country is going to turn to the red 100%, everybody's going to be kind of uniform about how much they're going to put up with as far as that goes.
Yeah, but one thing I don't want to see is like going, because I've as far as marijuana goes, I don't have any issue with it, and I think going backwards on it is silly. But Indiana, I mean, for Christ's sake, they were just having legislative voting over whether or not they were going to approve happy hour in the state of Indiana. And it's just like,
right.
Good God, guys, happy hour.
Right. That's a promotional. That's all it is a promotion. They're banning a promotion. Because when is happy hour? Whenever you fucking want it, Right. So it's like, that's like saying we're outlawing BOGOs between 1 to 3 o'clock. No, we're really fighting crime, aren't we? I mean,
but I'm just like, how backward? And I'm from Indiana. I mean, I live up in Michigan now, but that that was my home state for years and years and years. And I don't hate the state, but it's just like sometimes you hear stuff like that, and it's like, guys, come on,
Right.
for God's sake. Like you said, it's promotion. They're not.
It sounds good on paper. It sounds like you're doing something, but they don't do anything. Nobody does anything. Now, Holcomb even said with weed, he said he's not going to do anything on it until it's federally legal. So and that's because the activists made him so mad. Well, at least that's the story, because they were protesting him on his day off when nothing was going on. They were just being assholes. And then that's like, yeah, now you're harassing people. And see, that's really about the time all this crap started with Trump and all the different people going around, harass him in the streets, harass him. And that's when I started following the Standing Rock riots. That was a load of interesting stuff to do. I mean, I had the cops turn off my GoPro when I was in the march walking, because that was what we all did, because we were freedom fighters. And they were coming up and messing with my gear because I was recording, because they didn't want us keep it. Basically what it is like, if you go to any march or any rally, look for any guys wearing a lot of weird headgear that's the same. Like if they're all wearing chapeaus, they all look like they're in an AC/DC cover band. Mm-hmm. They're all the cops, because when they do the pictures, they have to be able to identify the undercover officers from everyone else. So there'll be a poker tell on them. You know, there's like the protesters in Hong Kong with the pink masks. You knew they were media or they were cops. And so the other cops knew not to beat the fuck out of them. That's how they knew. They color code themselves. So there's a secret code, you know. So, and these guys, it was chapeaus. They were like the big, you know, it was like they were such dicks. And I was so mad about it, but I had 2 GoPros on me that day. So I was following them with the other one. Because then I saw the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence and all these other groups that started to kind of fester in. And that was before the George Floyd stuff, which I wasn't allowed to go down to see. I was because nothing really is going to happen in any protest or parade until the darkness hits. And then you find out what's really going on. And I caught a lot of shit for following that. But I was like, when you start paying attention to what's actually going on in the videos and you start getting actual street reporting, and then you go to the narrative that you're hearing and you go, this isn't what's going on at all. Right. You know,
or but then you see, like when they, on all those protests, they would go before through the streets and you see pallets full of bricks just happen to be dropped off.
Every time you mention that on Facebook, you get banned. That was one on Alabama Street. Again, I wasn't there in person to do it, but I saw the picture on the street. It's on the street. I recognize the location. It's on Alabama. But here's the thing: so a pallet of bricks like that has to be delivered.
Right.
If it's coming from I used to be the load builder for Menards, so I know about these things. It's like somebody had to build that load. Somebody had to put it on a truck. Somebody had to take a forklift to get that truck off, set it down somewhere, because they don't handle load it. In this case, they didn't, because it was banded and shrink wrapped.
Right.
So it was dropped off. So somebody did a delivery, and finding out who did the delivery is just a question of finding the trucking company.
Right.
You know, and if you were doing any footage, you could find it that way to find out where they were coming from. But it was, you know, that had to be delivered. No, and that's not to say there aren't building projects in the neighborhood. But a lot of times, you know, when you got shit that people will steal, like patio pavers, dudes will roll up, fill up the trunk of their car, and drive off. That's not something you just leave undefended. I mean, most logical people that had a project that was for reals wouldn't do it. But a guy who just needed him there because you needed shit to chuck through windows, you know, they're perfect. Patio pavers are the best. They look like little tiny grenades.
Right.
You know, anyway.
No,
but yeah, that was a different time, and that kind of woke me up, and that's where I started calling stuff out. I wasn't Republican. I was a Trump. And the Q stuff. WikiLeaks set me up, because that set me up to see the whole thing with Libya, and then the whole thing about so Hillary Clinton's brother Tony Rodham was put in charge of a gold mine in Haiti just after Libya got knocked off and had all their gold stolen. Guy with no experience in the gold industry. Hey, it's Hillary's brother. He's dead now, they say.
Sure.
I don't think he's dead. Maybe he's dead for real. That was a real sketchy exit thing that happened with him, but I got all that on video too. I don't think he's dead, but whatever. Can't prove it. But boy, if he turns up right, I'm going to look pretty fucking cool. You know, that's really all it is. It's more of told you so bait. So if it doesn't come true, I'm okay with it. But if it does come true, You know, remember when you said I was an idiot? You know, that's fine. I'll watch and wait. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
It's really, see, if you keep it in, and if you keep it in that mindset, everyone, you deny it. It's no, you're just watching things envelop. We all put ourselves personally into everything, right? If there's a forest fire somewhere, we're all feels. It's like, nah, just objectify it as it's a forest fire. It's news. Take yourself back away and then ask yourself if it even matters to you. Because it's like, and when you start seeing that, you know, blue houses are fine and Christmas trees are missed while the entire house is blown completely away, and there's straight line cuts through houses and stuff, and you see that enough, you'll eventually decide that something ain't right. Something's weird. You know, what can I talk about on Facebook? That's a good place to start. Anytime you get a warning on something, you know what? Here's the craziest thing. I share memories now. I don't share a lot of new stuff. I'll share mainly the headlines and posts, but I don't do like I used to, because I used to put like PDFs and stuff out. But when I was really running hard, I did a whole bunch of stuff during the Ukraine war, because I locked down when the first weeks happened. Boy, I was recording and ripping everything, because I'm like, every piece of media matters. So I'm going to have it all. And then there was this one clip that came up, which was a TIE fighter. They had been shot down. It was sitting in the street, and cars were driving by. Somebody digitally put it in there, right?
Yeah.
I got busted for false information, because TIE fighters don't actually crash or something. I don't know. I was trying to figure out. I was like, man, if there's a unicorn in there, I'd have probably still been busted. You know, because they were like, they're so sensitive about stuff. I've been on a perpetual ban, I think, easily since 2020.
Right.
Easily since 2020. I mean, I go through my memories, and I'm like, I got whole sections of time. Usually it's from January 6th to, you know, like February. There's like a whole thing that happens where I don't, because it's 90-day bans. And then you go through the year, and I just keep copies of all my bans, because there's so many of them, that when the lawsuit happens, I'll be ready, you know, because there should be one. I would think that would be a class action lawsuit at some point, with people being.
Well, I mean, he had to go in front. Didn't he get slapped down in front of Congress because their fact checkers were falsifying things and completely just going after things that narrative.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is they yell at it, but it doesn't do nothing. That's just for show. They get him into Congress. They go, oh, you're doing, you know, and the thing is they know more going on than, you know, they know what's going on.
Right.
You know, the FBI has been using Twitter and Facebook as a way to perpetuate narratives and to restrict other people's. And that's been an organized thing, and they've proven it, and the Twitter files proved it. And, you know, but nobody's really upset about it, supposedly, you know, but it's like that now I get fact checks in fucking languages I can't even identify. I'm like, how is it? These guys heard my video? Really? Wow, that's crazy. I don't have that kind of reach. You know, I've been perpetually on the bottom since the church. Actually, I was when we did the first church cannabis live stream for the very first time, I about crapped myself. We had like 500,000 hits. It was nuts. We live streamed it, because first off, we had to struggle to get it. They didn't know so that was really the most dangerous part. But it's what got us in the most trouble, is that we were live streaming shows, and we were live streaming church services. So everybody was protesting and doing their shit, putting out stuff. And it was like, once we started playing that, but it was like after that, man, we got pounded down. It was 1,500 views. It was all we could get. When we did buy media, we did pay for Facebook ads. We got no more views. We were throttled the whole way through. And then I started playing games. Like, I've got all sorts of dead comics that shared my videos, because the content, when the person dies, you can't change their stuff unless there's somebody curating the account. Well, these guys didn't. Otto shared a lot of my stuff. So did Woody Rao. You know, I mean, it was like one of those things, because I knew they'd do me right. And I was sharing comedy stuff too. So, but they really hammered down on the comedy nights. And
so here's a question for you. Yeah, we're gonna have to wrap up here in about 4 or 5 minutes. Look, we could go for another 3 hours. And I definitely want to make, like I said, I want to make this a multi-part thing, because there's so much to talk about. But one thing, and you know, I don't know what your opinion of the man is, but in the later years George Carlin.
Yeah.
When they asked him about how he felt about the human race and where we were going, and he was just like, basically, I'm gonna sit back in my armchair and watch this thing burn itself down because this is. I don't think. I mean, it felt like there was more to what he wanted to say, but he had just so removed himself and was so guarded about kind of getting into the depths of it. And some of the things that you're saying, kind of smack of that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, okay. Consider when he died, and that at that point he hadn't seen any reason to have hope. So that, I think, is the biggest tragedy for George, is that if he knew the way things are now. See, I don't know if the thing is if the way that the narrative is going to work is you have to have a hero and you have to have a villain, and Trump is the appointed hero. He's coming to save the day. He's a gangster, so everybody loves him. He's funny. And, all the other things that has been smeared upon him is now kind of, it's blown up in their faces, the hassling that they've done. So the good guy narrative is the thing coming up. When he lost the second election, see, I was sure it was going to be like he'd win the second one, and then shit's going to hit the fan. And that actually would have, had he been there and done that. But what a perfect story change to take and say, no, he loses. And you go, what? I'm going to a relocation camp, dude. I'm done for. I'm fucked. So I'm panicking. But then the guy shows you in the course of those 4 years what an awful way of running things. And there were throttles put on stuff. Like things would go bad, but then things never really went, as bad as they could have been in some cases. But it was like everything went bad when it needed to have a headline filled. So like you're getting a daily dose of how awful things are. And, you're watching this guy stumble and thump around. And now his own party's talking about getting rid of him. And they're going to have to. They got to do something. But then you put it also into the narrative of the good guy's supposed to be arriving and winning, and he's crushing everything no matter what they do to stop him. He can't stop him. He's Rocky Balboa. He's Batman. You can't stop the guy. And then you got the old doddering guy. He's like, I'm still alive. And they're like, no, you're not. You're done. And we're going to bring in the Broad Squad or whatever. I don't know who they're going to give. I feel like it's going to be Michelle, because I think Obama's got to be brought back into the picture dramatically as the guy who was really running things. He's the guy behind the curtain, and it plays perfect, right? So then, the Kabuki theater plays and all the villains are revealed, and then they go, hey, guys, it's a happy ending, actually. You guys don't have to pay Social Security anymore because that was a hustle. The guys that did it are all New World Order, and, sorry about that. Go back to your lives.
And then the ones that paid in for years are like, all right, I want my money back.
Yeah, you'd be like, yeah. So, and that's if you go into that part of it, the Gezerah and Nazara, where they everybody would have that income that Libya would have had.
Right.
That everybody could have a life like that. They get your house or whatever. But the opposite is the New World Order, living in apartments, everything's electric. They can turn you on or off, social credit, controlled, plead your alliance, worship the devil, and then the game, we call the game. Is that the end of the game? Or is that the psyop? Are we in the psyop that tells us we got more time before the game is over? Because we're going to have the sequel. It'll be like, I don't know. I don't know. Again, I'm looking at it from a perspective of, if it's Revelations, it's going to happen. If it's the end of times, it's going to happen.
Right.
But if I run around like a chicken with my head cut off because I can't think about nothing and quit paying attention to stuff, I'm not going to be able to watch it. That's why we're here. We're here to witness. How do you behave in times of crisis, and what's your moral character? And then you find out what it is, and you're like, well, I'm not so bad.
Yeah.
But then is that we affect it that way? Can we change this with our will? If we desire to be a better place, can we make it a better place? But do we all have to have desire? But if you've been messed with and you don't know how to do it, you only get what you can work for, what you're prepared for. And if you don't know, you can get some other better things. Maybe that's the future. I'm on the optimistic end of it. I think I'm not saying I'm Carlin, I would never even, I don't even, because I would troll me for even bringing up this idea. But the idea, I feel like ideologically speaking, I feel like there's a good ending coming. It feels right, dude. It feels right. Justice has to come. It has to come because it's justice delayed. Then the world is the devil's. What if you could beat the devil?
Well,
optimism, I guess.
And that's what I hope for with people waking up and people, in the world starting to see like the veils being pulled back.
Yeah.
And they're seeing, the evil for what it is and the people that are doing the wrong things and those folks that they're aligning themselves with, like the Jay-Z's and the Clintons, right. The Epstein and all those people. And it's like, oh my God, I used to just idol worship these people.
Right.
I've got to do the thing that is not aligned with them. And when they get right. away from it, they, come over to where it's almost like when Neo wakes up in the Matrix and he's looking around at everything,
right.
But he's so weak and disillusioned because he's been so a nerd in the Matrix for so long, to use right. their terminology,
right.
That it takes a lot of rehabbing. And I feel like so many of us, are in that weak state where, we're starting to wake up now it seems like they're ratcheting down even harder,
right.
Rhetoric and everything else to
right.
keep the narrative going.
And the faster the pace goes, the closer you're building towards a climax to something. So if the idea is to keep you distracted in building, just keep it in terms of being manipulated. If somebody's manipulating you and they need to keep you in a continual state, they have to do things to you to mess with you. The moment you can calm down and find a center that isn't, then you start to find out that there's more to this reality than just what we're seeing. It's more about perception of our minds, how we behave, how we interact with the world, why we're really here. Right. It becomes more of a thing. I used to be a real hardcore atheist, dude. I'm not there anymore. I'm not there. I used to say I was an atheist because I was like, I wanted to at least be honest and say, listen, if I had doubts, I wanted to say I was at least being honest and I didn't believe. Mm-hmm. But I got belief now. I definitely believe in God. And I think the Jesus thing, that Jesus is the way, but Jesus is the way because he is the method of how you escape the matrix. If you don't do what he does, you don't escape the matrix because there's a specific coding that you need to get out of this damn place. This is a prison.
I've heard as much. And
so if you walk in the way and you do unto others as others would do to you, forgive trespass against you as we forgive those who trespass against us. So you're basically having it. Don't be a dick. Appreciate the guy that made you and don't be a dick. And then everybody's like, oh, you're judging. No, there's certain reasons why things happen. And that's a whole nother thing. But the idea is that there's this matrix and there's these assholes we're stuck in here with who are trying to make us fail. And they thought they were winning. That's why I don't think they're winning. And I don't think they're winning, So I'm beaming. I'm probably the most annoying guy to have around right now in a crisis. Because Epstein Island's coming out. We're going to find out a little bit more. What went down in those tunnels that they buried? Who was the chick in the nightgown? And what's that grindy thing? And is that a human body on the table? Oh, my. Where'd those Haiti kids go?
Okay. See, again.
Boom.
It's like 5,000 conspiracies.
But they all link. It all links together. It's all just, it's the slope of a story. All these threads are happening at the same time, and they're going to come to a nexus point where there's going to be revelations, right? Because that's the way all stories are written. They have growth, they have development, they have closure, then they grow. It's
linear storytelling with an arc.
Right. And imagine if every country got thrown over, and we're down to the last country. This is the last country that they haven't overthrown yet. And you realize that in the scope of people throwing over countries to take over the world, this is the last country. This is it. If this country fails, then you know what's coming. This is your nexus point. And I don't think it's going to fail. I really don't. I think it's been hilarious to watch, frankly. because I love watching people freak out, and they're so freaking out. They're so confident what they knew, and now it's in doubt. Beautiful. Best comedy ever. We're all going to live, folks. We're all going to live. Congratulations.
All right, so we've got to wrap this up. I definitely want to have, and thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to have you back again. And you know, I want to investigate some conspiracies. You know, because you talk about these different parts, and it's all linked together. Well, you know, helping people see their way out of the morass is to break down these things to just very quickly. It's just like with the flat earth thing. Okay. With my students, I have this thing every semester. It's dressed as, because I have to teach argument in 101, and I give them flat earth, round earth. And when they start investigating flat earth and they start looking at things like, you know, 1927, you know, Universal Pictures had a pretty much picture perfect version of the globe. NASA didn't get created until 1958, and we didn't get space photos until the 1960s.
Right.
So how in the fuck did you have a perfect topographical representation of the globe when biplanes were still a thing?
Right.
And just even the smallest thing like that even if they could explain it away, it puts a nugget in their brain where they're like, well, wait a second. And that's where we win.
Right.
Is where when the mind cracks open, things start to take root, and then they start to question shit.
Right.
You know, and that's, you know, I've always known something was wrong, but it was those little nuggets where it's like, wait a second, this isn't right. This doesn't all.
Yeah.
So, right. So, all right, like close us out. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us on this first episode of Blurred Lines. We were all over the place, but you know, my God, there's so many.
Sorry, folks.
So much bullshit that to uncover that it's, you know, it's crazy.
The jack